Commander Vix Talon stood on the bridge of the Centaur warship Inevitable Victory, his forearms crossed in a display of supreme confidence. Before him, the massive viewscreen showed Earth growing larger as his fleet of 200 warships approached their latest conquest. "Commander," Lieutenant Zara said, her tentacles rippling with barely contained excitement. "Preliminary scans of the human defense systems are complete." Vix allowed his secondary mouth to curl into what humans might recognize as a smirk. "Do tell, Lieutenant. How many of their pathetic orbital platforms will we need to destroy before they surrender?" "That's the interesting part, sir," Zara continued, her violet skin flushing darker with amusement. "They appear to have no unified orbital defense grid. Just a scattered collection of what they call satellites, mostly for communication and weather monitoring." A deep, rumbling laugh echoed through the bridge, startling several junior officers. "You mean to tell me," Vix said between chuckles, "that these humans have achieved spaceflight but haven't bothered to defend their own planet? How charming." Tactical Officer Major Krill brought up a holographic display of Earth's military installations. "Their ground-based defenses are equally primitive, Commander. Projectile weapons, crude missiles, and something they call tanks. Nothing that could penetrate our shield technology." "Tanks?" Vix exclaimed, slapping one of his lower hands against his thigh. "Next, you'll tell me they still use combustion engines and nuclear fission." "Actually," Sir Krell began. "No, do not tell me. Let me savor this moment." Vix raised all four arms dramatically. "The great Centaur Dominion, masters of 1,000 worlds, about to add another primitive species to our glorious empire, and they will not even give us a proper fight." The bridge crew exchanged knowing glances and suppressed grins. This was going to be too easy. "Sir," the communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the human leadership, something called the United Nations Security Council." "Put them through," Vix said, straightening his ceremonial armor. "Let's see what these charming primitives have to say." The view screen flickered to reveal a group of humans seated around a large table. Vix noted with amusement that they wore different styles of clothing, some in military uniforms, others in formal civilian attire. "Greetings, representatives of Earth," Vix announced in his most condescending tone. "I am Commander Vix Talon of the Centaur Dominion. We have come to accept your surrender and integrate your world into our magnificent empire." A woman with graying hair and stern features leaned forward. "Commander Talon, I am Secretary General Chen. We wish to negotiate terms for a peaceful—" "Negotiate?" Vix interrupted, laughing. "My dear primitive, you misunderstand the situation. This is not a negotiation, it is a courtesy call to inform you that your world now belongs to us. We have scanned your defenses, or should I say, your lack thereof." The bridge crew snickered, and Vix preened at their appreciation of his wit. Chen's expression remained unreadable. "Commander, I strongly urge you to reconsider your approach. Humanity has no desire for conflict, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." "Defend yourselves?" Vix scoffed. "With what? Your charming little tanks?" He gestured to Major Krell. "End transmission. Deploy the first wave of landing craft. Let's show these humans what real military power looks like." As the screen went dark, Lieutenant Zarev hesitated. "Sir, should we not at least conduct more detailed scans of their military installations? Protocol suggests." "Protocol?" Vix scoffed. "Lieutenant, I have led 17 successful planetary conquests. Their most advanced weapons wouldn't scratch the paint on our shuttles." The fleet took position around Earth, their massive forms casting shadows over the clouds. Vix ordered the deployment of 100,000 Centaur warriors in full battle armor. "Send them our standard terms of surrender," he commanded. "And make sure to emphasize how merciful we are to those who submit willingly. It adds a nice touch of sophistication to the conquest, don't you think?" As the landing craft descended through Earth's atmosphere, Vix settled into his command chair, already composing his victory speech. Then came the first unexpected transmission. "Sir," the communications officer said, voice tight with confusion. "The humans are requesting a face-to-face meeting. Not a surrender ceremony, a diplomatic summit." Vix laughed. "Now they want to talk? After we've already deployed our ground forces? How quaint." "Sir," Lieutenant Zara added hesitantly, "the human representative, Commander Blake Nash, has an unusual background. According to public records, she has extensive experience in both military operations and xenodiplomacy." "Xenodiplomacy?" Vix snorted. "They've never met aliens before us. What experience could they possibly have?" Still, he agreed to the meeting if only for the entertainment value. The chosen location was a human military base in a region called Switzerland, carved into the side of a mountain. Vix arrived with a small honor guard, their ceremonial armor gleaming under the afternoon sun. Commander Nash awaited them at the entrance, flanked by an honor guard of human soldiers. She was tall for her species, with dark skin and sharp features that showed no trace of fear. "Welcome to Earth, Commander Talon," Nash said, extending a hand in greeting. "We appreciate you taking the time to discuss this personally." Vix ignored the gesture, keeping his arms crossed. "There is nothing to discuss, Commander Nash. Your planet will be incorporated into the Dominion. The only question is how many of your people must die before you accept this reality." Nash's smile remained steady. "Perhaps we could continue this conversation inside? Our facility has been prepared to accommodate your physiological needs." Vix hesitated. Prepared? His fleet had only arrived yesterday. Still, curiosity got the better of him. Inside, the meeting room was perfectly calibrated for Centair comfort temperature, atmospheric composition, even the seating. "Sir," Major Krell whispered, "this level of preparation suggests they knew we were coming." "Impossible," Vix muttered. "They must have guessed." Nash took her seat, digital displays flaring to life. "Now then, Commander Talon, let's discuss the current situation. Your fleet has occupied our orbit and deployed ground forces without provocation. This violates at least 17 articles of interstellar law." Vix blinked. "Interstellar law? You don't even have interstellar travel." "More than you might think," Nash replied smoothly. "For instance, we know the Centair Dominion has never attempted to conquer a spacefaring species before. Perhaps you should have done more research before committing to this invasion." A cold weight settled in Vix's stomach. How could they possibly know that? Before he could speak, Major Krell slammed his fists on the table. "This is outrageous!" Krell roared. "You dare lecture us while your primitive weapons cannot even scratch our shields? I say we end this farce now." Nash's expression darkened slightly. "Major Krell, I strongly advise against making assumptions about our defensive capabilities." Krell sneered and drew his energy blade. "I will not be lectured by a." The blade flickered, then died. Krell stared at it in shock. "What have you done?" "Nothing permanent," Nash assured him. "Just a localized electromagnetic pulse calibrated to disable Centair energy weapons. We can restore functionality once you demonstrate better judgment." Vix's secondary hearts raced. This was impossible. The humans shouldn't have technology advanced enough to selectively neutralize their weapons. Unless. Nash leaned forward, still calm. "Now then, Commander Talon, shall we discuss terms for the immediate withdrawal of your forces? Or would you prefer a demonstration of our other defensive capabilities?" "This is a trick," Vix declared, standing abruptly. "Some sort of primitive psychological warfare. We are leaving. You have 24 hours to surrender, or we will begin planetary bombardment." As the Centair delegation stormed out of the mountain facility, Vix could not shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. The humans were too confident, too prepared, and Major Krill's energy blade still refused to function. Back aboard the inevitable Victory, Vix received reports that the first wave of ground forces had begun establishing beachheads in strategic locations around the planet. Everything was proceeding according to plan despite the unsettling meeting with Commander Nash. "Sir," Lieutenant Zara called out, "we are detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. They appear to be some form of—" The ship's warning klaxons cut her off mid-sentence. Across the view screen, strange symbols began appearing, scrolling faster than even Vix's enhanced vision could track. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Report." "Sir," Major Krill's voice shook slightly. "Our primary computer systems are being accessed by an unknown source." "The humans," Zara whispered. "They are inside our network." Vix stared at the view screen in growing horror as realization dawned they had catastrophically underestimated these primitives. Major Krill's impulsive behavior at the meeting had given them all the justification they needed to respond. The first ground assault reports made absolutely no sense. Vix's troops were reporting simultaneous attacks from multiple directions, yet scans showed no large human military formations. "What do you mean they vanished?" Vix demanded, his secondary mouth twitching in frustration. 10,000 Centaur warriors do not simply lose track of their targets. The holographic image of Ground Commander Nexus flickered as another explosion rocked his position. "Sir, these humans," Nexus coughed, his image distorted by static. "They strike from nowhere, inflict casualties, and disappear into the terrain. Our armor is holding against their weapons, but they are targeting weak points we did not know we had." Lieutenant Zara brought up tactical displays from multiple combat zones. Small groups of humans were employing what the Centaur battlefield computers labeled as irregular warfare. But there was nothing irregular about their precision. "New contact," the sensor officer called out. "Multiple small vessels approaching landing zone 7. Vix watched in disbelief as 3 human aircraft appeared from behind a mountain range, flying so low they nearly scraped the treetops. Their design was unlike anything in the Centaur database. Based on their size, they should have been reconnaissance craft. But the energy readings— "Sir," Lieutenant Zara said quietly, "you need to see this." The tactical display showed a human female in combat armor, her face partly visible through a specialized helmet. The name patch read Lieutenant Rhea Patel, Task Force Chimera. "Approaching target zone," Patel said, her voice clear over the intercepted communications. "Package is hot and ready for delivery. Time to show our guests why you don't bring an energy shield to a kinetic fight." Vix did not understand the human's words, but the results became horrifyingly clear moments later. The 3 aircraft released their payloads, not bombs or missiles, but hundreds of tiny submunitions that somehow passed straight through his troops' energy shields. "Impossible!" Nexus shouted over the command channel. "Our shields are calibrated to stop any known weapon." "That's the problem," Patel's voice came through again, dripping with satisfaction. "You prepared for energy weapons, plasma bolts, even nuclear detonations. But sometimes, good old-fashioned tungsten rods accelerated to hypersonic velocities work just fine." The casualty reports began flooding in. Over 2,000 Centaur warriors down in a single strike. Their mighty battle armor designed to withstand direct hits from capital ship weapons was being punctured by what were essentially advanced arrows. "Pull back to defensive positions," Vix ordered. "Initiate orbital bombardment of all human military installations." "Sir," Major Krill interrupted, his earlier bravado completely gone. "Our targeting systems are still compromised. We cannot get a weapons lock on any surface locations." More reports poured in from around the planet. A Centaur armored column ambushed in a narrow valley by what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons, except these projectiles somehow tracked individual targets, curving in mid-flight to strike at joint seams and sensor arrays. "They're in the trees," one patrol leader screamed before his signal went dead. "How are they in the trees? Our scanners show nothing but—" The signal cut off as a massive explosion lit up the tactical display. When the smoke cleared, an entire Centaur patrol had vanished along with several acres of forest. Analysis. Vix demanded. What kind of weapon did that? Lieutenant Zara's tentacles writhed nervously. Sir, it appears to be some form of fuel-air explosive device. But the dispersal pattern suggests a level of precision that should be beyond human technology. Should be, Vix growled. Our intelligence said they were barely past the nuclear age. How do they have weapons that can defeat our shields? That's what happens when you rely on outdated intel. Lieutenant Patel's voice cut through their command channel again. Did you really think we'd broadcast our true capabilities? That we wouldn't prepare after detecting your approach 3 months ago? Vix felt his scales bristling. How are you accessing this channel? It's quantum encrypted. Patel laughed. Quantum encryption? Please. We cracked it the moment you entered the solar system. Right now, my team is broadcasting this conversation to every Centaur unit on the planet. They deserve to know what they're really up against. As if to emphasize her point, another series of explosions rippled across the battlefield. This time, the weapons released some kind of electromagnetic pulse that left Centaur warriors stumbling blind as their neural interfaces crashed. Sir, Lieutenant Zara reported, her voice shaking. Task Force Chimera is deploying something new. Energy readings are off the charts, but they don't match any known weapon signature. The tactical display showed Patel's team advancing through the chaos, wearing what looked like primitive mechanical assist frames, except these frames somehow negated the Centaur's superior strength and speed, allowing the humans to engage in close combat with genetically engineered super soldiers. You should see your face right now, Patel commented, and Vix realized with horror that they had access to his bridge cameras. Well, faces. That expression of dawning realization that you've made a terrible mistake. A new explosion pattern appeared on the tactical display, but this one was different. The humans weren't targeting Centaur troops. Instead, they were systematically destroying their own infrastructure. They're demolishing their own cities? Major Krill wondered aloud. Not demolishing, Zara corrected, her voice barely a whisper. Revealing. As the dust settled, gleaming structures of advanced alloys emerged from beneath the rubble of what they had assumed were primitive human buildings. Defense installations that had been masked as commercial centers. Weapon platforms disguised as communications towers. Did you really think, Patel asked, that a species paranoid enough to split the atom less than a century after achieving powered flight wouldn't prepare for alien invasion? That we just broadcast our military capabilities to the cosmos? Vix watched in mounting horror as thousands of seemingly innocuous human satellites began transforming. Attention, Centaur invasion fleet, Nash's voice echoed through every channel. The Sol defense grid is now online. Lieutenant Zara's displays exploded with warning indicators. Sir, detecting multiple weapon locks. Their targeting systems are far more advanced than anything we have encountered. Impossible, Vix whispered, but the word had lost all meaning. They are using our own shield frequencies to enhance their penetration. Vix gripped the command rail as his flagship shuddered under multiple impacts. How? How do they know our frequencies? We told you, Nash replied. We detected your approach 3 months ago, plenty of time to analyze your technology and develop countermeasures. Did you think those civilian weather satellites were just tracking storms? On the tactical display, more human weapons platforms emerged from hiding. Massive railgun installations rose from beneath desert sands. Mountain ranges split open, revealing missile silos that had been hidden for decades, waiting for this very moment. Sir, Lieutenant Zara called out. Ground forces reporting new contacts. The humans are deploying some kind of mechanized infantry units. The video feed showed what appeared to be primitive mechanical walkers, barely twice human height. Vix almost laughed despite the dire situation. Surely, these simple machines were no match. His thought was cut short as one of the walkers engaged a Centauri heavy armor unit. Its movements were impossibly fast, arms shifting into weapon systems that transformed quicker than targeting computers could track. The pride of the Centauri ground forces was torn apart in seconds. "Meet the Chimera battle frames," Lieutenant Patel announced cheerfully. Quantum computers running combat prediction algorithms powered by miniature fusion reactors. Would you like a demonstration of their full capabilities? Before Vix could respond, hundreds more battle frames emerged from concealment. Some launched from underwater bases that their scans had dismissed as marine research stations. Others dropped from high-altitude deployment pods disguised as cargo aircraft. Casualties mounting across all sectors. Major Krills shouted. "The humans aren't just defeating us, they're systematically destroying our ability to retreat." Another salvo from the orbital defense grid scattered the remaining Centauri ships. Those that tried to jump to faster-than-light travel found their drives mysteriously malfunctioning courtesy of viral code uploaded during the initial cyber attacks. "You know what the funny part is?" Nash asked conversationally. "We actually do want peaceful contact with alien civilizations. We've been broadcasting welcome messages for decades. But we also planned for the possibility that our first visitors might not be friendly." Vix watched helplessly as his mighty invasion fleet was dismantled, piece, by weapons and tactics that should not have existed. The humans had hidden their true capabilities beneath a carefully constructed mask of primitive technology and disorganized defense systems. "Final analysis?" Lieutenant Zara reported, her voice hollow. "The humans possess technological parity or superiority in multiple critical areas. Their distributed defense network is unlike anything in our tactical database. And their combat doctrine," she hesitated. "It suggests they have been preparing for this exact scenario for generations." Vix completed the thought for her. "They weren't revealing their capabilities, they were reading our responses to each escalation, probing our weaknesses, and adjusting their strategies in real time." The inevitable victory shuddered as another wave of relativistic projectiles pierced its compromised shields. Warning klaxons blared as multiple decks reported catastrophic damage. "Now then, Commander Talon Vix," Nash said. "Shall we discuss those surrender terms? I believe you will find our conditions quite reasonable, all things considered." Vix had always prided himself on understanding warfare. 17 successful planetary conquests had taught him everything about military superiority, or so he had thought. "Launch the reserve forces," he commanded, desperation creeping into his voice. "All remaining ground units, converge on their command centers." Sir Lieutenant Zara hesitated. "Our forces are already at their breaking point. Perhaps we should consider Commander Nash's offer." "No." Vix slammed all four hands onto his command console. "The Centauri Dominion does not surrender to primitives. Launch everything we have." The remaining Centauri troops charged forward in a final, desperate assault. Vix watched the tactical displays as his forces threw everything at the human defense's energy weapons, plasma cannons, even their dreaded sonic disruptors, all deployed simultaneously. Lieutenant Patel's laugh crackled through the compromised communications. "Now this is just embarrassing. Commander Nash, permission to demonstrate why we call this task force Chimera." "Permission granted, Lieutenant. Show them what combined arms warfare really means." Vix had dismissed the term when he first encountered it in preliminary research on human military doctrine. Now, he watched in stunned silence as its true meaning unfolded. Human aircraft swooped in low, their electronic warfare suites neutralizing Centauri targeting systems. Ground-based electromagnetic pulse generators activated in precise sequences, creating corridors of disabled alien technology. Battle frames moved through these corridors, engaging at point-blank range, where their superior agility negated the Centauri's raw power. "Sir." Major Krill's voice shook. "They are herding our forces into kill zones. Every time we adapt to one weapon system, they switch to another. It's like fighting an enemy that knows our doctrine better than we do." A new type of human vessel emerged from underwater bases, their hulls covered in metamaterials that bent light around them. They launched salvos of missiles that corkscrewed through the air in physically impossible patterns, somehow managing to find gaps in Centauri formations that should not have existed. Fascinating, isn't it? Nash commented. Your species relies on overwhelming force single solutions applied with maximum power. But humans? We specialize in interlocking systems of warfare. Every weapon complements another. Every tactic feeds into a larger strategy. Vix watched as his ground forces were systematically dismantled. When they spread out to avoid artillery, human snipers picked them off with rifles that somehow anticipated target movement. When they clustered for protection, fuel-air explosives turned their own armor into shrapnel. Lieutenant Zara, Vix said quietly. Tell me how many different weapon systems are the humans currently employing against us? Zara's tentacles worked furiously over her console. At last count 73 distinct categories, sir. And they appear to be introducing new ones every time we develop countermeasures. A massive explosion lit up the tactical display as another Centauri ship succumbed to the orbital defense grid. But this time, Vix noticed something different about the debris pattern. They aren't trying to destroy us anymore, he realized aloud. They're disabling our ships with precise strikes, testing different weapon configurations, learning our vulnerabilities. Very good, Commander, Nash said approvingly. We could have annihilated your fleet in the first salvo. But this way, we get to analyze your technology, test our weapons, and train our forces in real combat conditions. Think of it as a live-fire exercise. The horror of the situation finally dawned on Vix. His mighty invasion fleet, the pride of the Centauri Dominion, hadn't found an easy conquest. They had stumbled into a carefully prepared testing ground, where every engagement provided the humans with more data about Centauri capabilities. Sir Lieutenant Zara's voice was barely a whisper. New analysis of human communication suggests this was not their primary defense force. What? Vix felt his secondary heart skip a beat. Task Force Chimera appears to be their rapid response unit. According to intercepted transmissions, their main battle groups are still in reserve, waiting to see if they are needed. Major Krill laughed, the sound bordering on hysteria. All this devastation, and they haven't even committed their main forces. Nash's voice was almost kind. The next time you encounter a seemingly primitive species, you will remember Earth. You will remember how appearances can be deceiving. And most importantly, you will remember what happened when you chose conquest over diplomacy. Vix stared at the tactical display, watching the last of his ground forces surrender to human battle frames. Everything he thought he knew about warfare had been systematically proven wrong. They had not found primitives waiting to be conquered. They had found warriors.